This is just uncomfortable. This is not right. It's not right.
Can we get everybody's attention to the back? Table in the back. All the air back. Hi, I'm Issa Dorsey. I'm the new board president of the LJCC. So excited to be here today for the Southern Jewish Voices program. It's a partnership between the JCC and Temple Beth-El to help fight anti-Semitism and raise awareness for different voices for our Jewish community. So without further ado, Margaret, Jacob, and Maurine.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm super excited to be here with Maurine and Jacob today. This is kind of a special interview because Maurine is our first non-Jewish voice on Southern Jewish Voices, but I thought that it would really be interesting to have somebody on who's such an integral part of the Jewish community and is not herself Jewish. So we're going to be talking about everything interfaith today. I've had the pleasure of working with both Maurine and Jacob in my capacity at Temple Beth-El, in large part on our Inter-Everything programming, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And I see some other faces from our interfaith community, Inter-Everything community in here today. So just great to be here with everybody, and we'll dive in. We have a lot to cover, and there's two of them instead of one, so we'll see what we get to in our 45 minutes. But I would love to start off talking a little bit about both of your early lives and family and religious backgrounds. So I think we'll start with Jacob and then go to Maurine. And Jacob, I know that you were born in Israel in a Jewish family, so give us a little bit more context on that background.
Yeah, so thanks, Margaret. So I was born in 71 in Israel and grew up at Kiryat Ata. We lived there. My mom was right there, and my brother and my dad, both my brother and myself were born in Israel. I was born in 71, like I said, grew up in Kiryat Ata. But the history starts a little bit further past, obviously. My mom grew up here in Birmingham, went to Shades Valley High School, and found herself in Israel, and that's where she met my father, and they got married, and they had two boys, and that's where we grew up. And then we moved back to Birmingham because my mom's family was originally from Birmingham. So we moved here when I was 6. It was maybe 5 years into pocket change, 6 years old, but somewhere around there. Moved back to Birmingham and went to the day school for a year. Went to a public school at Birmingham for a little bit, and ultimately we moved to Mountain Brook, and I went to Crestline, Mountain Brook Junior High, the high school, graduated from there, and then went to Alabama. And I'll let her roll in from there, and we'll then catch up again.
So I grew up in Miami. I grew up in a devout Catholic family. I went to Catholic school up until the 6th grade and then transferred to the public school system. And so do you want me to tell kind of about my family?
Yeah, tell us a little about your family, and you shared with me that Catholicism was really important for them. They were really dedicated. You can tell us a little bit about that.
So my mom and dad both grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and all of their families are there. Two very Catholic families, great families, large families. They moved to Miami. That's where my sister and I were born. And they were very, very active at the church there, volunteering. My dad ushered. He was in the men's club, the sisterhood, the fundraising, they did it all. So I've grown up in a family and watched, volunteerism is in my blood, I guess you can say. And all that was done at the church. I think as I got, we went to church every Sunday or Saturday night, whichever one we went to. And by the time I got in high school, I wanted to do other things, like go out with my friends or sleep in, so kind of by the time I was in high school, I was like, oh, do we have to go every single weekend? Yes, we do. Get in the car. Okay. So got in the car, kept going. I graduated from high school and went to Alabama. And that's where, when I went to Alabama, I think when I got there, trying to find myself, joined a sorority, very active, did all the fun things, studied too, some. And then didn't really think much about going to church
Yeah.
at Alabama. I just I have a lot of sorority sisters that were Christian, and none of us, I don't think, really went to church a lot. So I think it was just a time to step back and focus on other things. And that was all fine. By the time I was a junior, Jacob was a senior.
Right.
We met through a mutual friend.
Right.
And it's history from there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I want to get to y'all's early relationship, but before I do, one thing we're going to talk about a little bit today is sort of change over time and attitudes towards interfaith families like yours. So Jacob, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about, growing up at Temple Beth-El, did you see other interfaith families? Were you aware of interfaith families, or what were sort of the attitudes at that time?
Yeah, I mean, growing up at Temple Beth-El, I don't ever recall knowing any interfaith families, and maybe there were, but I just, being young and didn't really care, so it didn't show up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we went to all the high holy days. We would every once in a while maybe go to Shabbat services. I can't remember. I was part of AZA and did all that throughout high school. But yeah, I mean, we just did our thing.
Yeah, not as maybe
Right.
present of a topic
Yeah,
for
it
you
wasn't,
at the
yeah.
time. Yeah. Well, so tell us a little bit about, meeting, and particularly, what those early conversations were like for you around religion. When did this come up for you? When did it start to seem important? And tell me a little bit about that.
So, as I said, I wasn't really focused on religion in college. I don't think you were
No,
either.
I wasn't either, no.
So Jacob was a swimmer at Alabama. He wasn't part of the fraternity. He wasn't a ZBT, but he did a lot because his younger brother was a ZBT, so he was at basically the parties. I don't think you did anything other than go to their parties.
Right.
But so I was a junior, he was a senior.
Mm-hmm.
We met through a mutual friend. Do you want to tell the?
Yeah, so this is a great story right here. Everybody ready? The tables will be set at this point, and the truth will come out. So we had a mutual friend, and our friend, she invited me to come over. I guess during that time, I guess some of you remember Melrose Place. Anyway, that was the hot
was like
thing.
90210,
Yeah,
but
like
it was
90210,
Melrose
but
Place.
Melrose was before that. Anyway.
Right.
So she had called me up and said, hey, come over, hang out with a bunch of girls. I had a black lab, little pup, and I said, well, this is great. I mean, myself, one guy, and all these girls. I'm like, this is a slam dunk. And so I came there and met Maureen and all of her roommates. And I kind of really, gravitated to her pretty quickly.
Which I didn't know.
Right.
I just thought he was a guy who liked to hang out with all the girls, but I liked the puppy, so at the time.
He was a good-looking dog, too.
He was.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess, a few weeks, a month, whatever, who knows how long it took, but it was coming ready for ZBT south of the border, their big fraternity party. I guess it was usually around April, I don't know, something like that's when they usually have it. And so I mustered up the courage to call her house, and her roommate...
No, you talked to me, and what did you
No,
say?
no,
it was me. I'm telling you, it was me.
Anyway, so
was me.
okay,
What
so
did you say?
maybe it was you. So I said, would you guys like to go to the party the south of the border?
He said, do you guys want to
you
go
guys,
to the
right,
south of
right.
the border party? I said, I don't know. Let me ask my girls. I'll
Right,
call
right.
you back.
And so Brandy,
So I went to
our
my
good
girls.
friend, went to the girls, and Brandy's like, I don't think he's asking us. I think he's asking you. And so
I said, no. He said,
so
you
did
guys.
Did you
that
call me
means
back,
us.
or did I call you back?
I
Either
called
way.
you back,
Right.
and I said-
asked, and I said, well, I think I'm just asking you.
I said, my roommate thinks that you're only asking me, but I'm trying to tell her that no, he's inviting all of us to go. And he was like, well, and it was quiet, and I thought, well, that's weird.
Yeah. So I was really asking
He's like,
her.
I'm only asking
Right,
you. I'm
right.
like, well, now that's
Yeah.
really weird because we're
Right.
friends, and I thought we're all friends. I don't get that, but
Right. Yeah, so-
okay, I'll go.
So she said
I
yes.
might not actually settle it today.
Right. And so she said yes, and so we went to the party, and this is where we're going to set the table clean right here. So to this day, Maureen insisted upon that she was the one who kissed me when I reached over, and still to this day, it was her. So she's the one who did it. So anyway, yeah.
Do not believe that, okay? You all know me. You know I'm not making the first move. I'm not that kind of person. He leaned down,
Right.
and I leaned down at the same time,
And
and
she
he
kissed me.
swooped in, and he kissed me. And he says I kissed him. I'm like, that's not true.
So that's
Anyway.
how we met, and from that point
We've
on,
been together
we were,
ever since.
And we've been together ever since.
Right. I knew that he was Jewish. I didn't care. We were just friends. I didn't he knew I was Catholic, and we were just friends, so
Right.
we didn't really think anything about it. I certainly wasn't planning on marrying him, you know, at the time. At the time.
So I'm assuming somewhere between this point and when you did get married, though, things got
Correct.
more serious.
Right.
So
Right.
when did those
Right.
conversations, kind of come up?
So I think we just still, we hung out all the time. We went on dates. We still hung out with friends a lot. But I guess you graduated in May of that
Right,
year,
right.
and you were going back to Birmingham to work for your family's chemical company, and I was staying in Tuscaloosa for a whole nother year. And he told his mom, like, I'm going to work for the family, but I'm going to stay in Tuscaloosa. Are you good with that? And Karen said, yes, that's fine. So he rented an apartment in Tuscaloosa, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so he was there my whole senior year.
Right.
So I was like, wow, that's kind of my girlfriends were like, do you think he's moving here for you? I'm like, no, surely not. I mean, the chemical business must be really good in Tuscaloosa. Like, no, certainly not. But anyway, so we were still dated through that whole other year. And then when I graduated, that's when we were like, okay, what are we going to do? So my background is special education. I was a special education teacher for 10 years. And when I graduated, I applied for jobs in Birmingham and in Atlanta and maybe Nashville, and I can't even remember where else. And the first job I got was at Gilmore Bell Vocational School in Bessemer, teaching very low functioning kids with special needs. And so I was like, okay, well, this is my job. That's where I'm going. Well, what are we going to do? I guess we're still dating. So we decided we were both moving to Birmingham. Since we were both moving to Birmingham, we might as well move in together. We'd been together for a year and a half. Let's just see, how this works. So we rented a house in Crestwood, close to where you're living now. And at that point, obviously, we started talking more about religion. And I went to Temple Beth-El and visited went with your family during high holidays. And, we just started, I started exploring and listening and paying attention to what the Jewish religion had to offer. Because I didn't know anything about it at all. So not looking for a religion for myself, because I grew up, I know my identity. I know where I came from. I know what I believe. I know what I was raised. I know about the Catholic religion, but it was more, interest in seeing what the Jewish religion was all about. I know that what I've learned is that there's fantastic things about the Jewish religion. There's things that I don't like about the Jewish religion. There's fantastic things about the Catholic religion and things that I hate about the Catholic religion. So what I realized after all that is that, if we were to have kids, and we discussed this before we ever even got engaged, but I knew that we needed to pick one or the other. We didn't want our kids to be confused. We wanted them to have that identity that we both had. Different religions, but we both had that religious identity, and we knew that we wanted to instill that and give that to our daughters. So do we want to keep moving on with this, or do we want to go another direction?
I didn't want to cut you off, but
Okay,
one
go
thing
ahead.
that I would like to pull out, because I think it's an important part of your story, is your decision not to convert. Can you talk just a little bit
Yes.
more about that and, what that means for your own identity?
So after kind of stepping away from practicing Catholicism, again, I never questioned my identity. I knew who I was, and I knew at some point I would go back to it, but at that point in time, that was just not my focus in life. I did take a lot of time to learn about the Jewish religion and what, everything about it. I think Karen gave me some Jewish books at some point. It was like, here, you should read these. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I knew for myself, I learned for myself that I didn't want to convert. So now the question was, how can I stay Catholic and be true to myself, yet also marry the man that I think I'm supposed to marry because I love him? And what do we do with our kids? So it was all kind of experimental, but
A lot of open
my parents.
conversations.
You asked me about how my parents felt about it and how Jacob's parents felt about it, and I said the one thing my dad said. My parents are very quiet, wonderful people. They're not judgmental. They have been supportive of us always, since day one. And my dad, the one thing he said was, "You made your bed, now you lie in it." And I took that as like, ooh, ouch. But then I thought, well, I think what he means is you make your own decision and you stick with it.
Right.
whatever that decision is, you stick with it. So I thought, okay, well, then I got to do a lot of research to figure out if this is going to work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that will be a good transition too into talking about some of your involvement at the temple. But Jacob, I do want to give you a chance to add anything on this too.
We had a lot of conversations, trying moments, but we did everything together. So every time we took a step together. And sometimes it was we had a roadblock, we figured out what we needed to do, but we always managed to kind of push through it. We had moments where we went to Temple Beth-El, and the time with the rabbi at the time, we met with that rabbi, and I'm not going to mention the names, but this individual said, don't do it, don't, and we're like, well.
So what do? We did it.
We did it. We said, we'll prove you wrong, right? And and I'll tell you this: the where we kind of came back into the fold was Rabbi Glessman, and because the way he was so open and his services were so different and really kind of camaraderie. It was easy for Maurine to attend services and be able to hang out. So that's when we started kind of getting into the fold of the synagogue, was with Rabbi Glessman. It just made things a lot easier for us.
Yeah.
But I want to back up for a minute, because we decided before we even got engaged that we were going to raise our kids Jewish. And I think that's the most important part of this entire story, is that we had all of those crying days, all those crying nights. What are we going to do? How is this going to work? Forget it, I'm going to leave. No, I'm not going to leave. We're going to do this. No, we're not going to do this. But there was a point where I knew that, to me, it didn't matter if our kids were going to be Jewish or Catholic, because I knew there were great things about both religions. I knew that we needed to pick one. I am a more compromising person, I would say, and so he was probably not going to be the compromiser. So it was kind of a give and take, in that, well, I gave and you took, basically. Really wasn't so much of a give and take, but
It is technically a give and take.
right. I gave, you took.
Right. There's give and take.
But that being said, in my mind, I made up the decision to do that, because I did the research on the religion. I was comfortable enough with it to raise my kids Jewish. So, going back to what my dad said, I made my mind up, and that's what I was going to do. So I said, okay, you know what? I'll do this. So we weren't even engaged yet, but I said, I can do this. I think I can do this. I don't know if I can, but I think I can. And so we eventually later got engaged and, got married and whatever. But that was already decided. And I think a lot of people don't decide that before they get engaged. They wait until after they're engaged, and then it's too late to back out.
It's problematic. In some instances.
Not always.
Not always, but it's better to have it all up front and
right.
Be completely transparent, and then you can
right.
make it happen.
There was no official connection at that point, so I knew that I could move to Atlanta, where my parents were at the time, and I could go to wherever I wanted. If it didn't work, it wasn't going to work, right? So that's kind of the key point, I think, for us, is that we made that mature decision at a young age to make the decision before we got engaged.
Yeah.
So we're 25 years later. This coming
25
June.
this June.
Right.
Yep.
And you two.
Actually 30 years. We've been together 5 plus.
36.
Before then. Yeah, something like that.
36 years? Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's 30.
30, yeah.
31.
Yeah.
It's 31.
We'll get a follow-up note to everyone about that.
31. It's 31.
And also, so I guess I have two different thoughts. So this might end up being 2 questions that we need to break up. One, I think it is interesting that you're talking about how over time it felt like things evolved, where some of the services were more accessible, attitudes were changing, and I want to hit on that. But I think that this is part of a larger question, which is I want to hear from you, and then also from you, Jacob, from the other spouse's perspective, what it's like to be so involved at the temple as a non-Jewish spouse, because you told us earlier that the volunteerism was sort of in your blood, and you've talked about how you made that choice and kind of stuck to it. You both kind of made that choice and really leaned into it, and so it just strikes me that you are very active and involved and not just sort of on the sidelines. So what has that been like?
Well, when we first came to Temple Beth-El after we graduated, it was not a very welcoming culture, I would say. You walk in the door and everybody knows everyone and you don't know anyone and all the eyes are on you and they're wondering, is she Jewish? Is she Jewish? Nobody's really, welcoming and saying hello or we're glad to have you, but everybody's staring. So that kind of, that stare kind of feel, I think, was there for many, many years, actually. But over time, I got more comfortable because we were there a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't really, we were friends with the people we were friends with, and the people that were friendly. And, after being there for so long, I just eventually got comfortable. When we had kids, it was even easier because I think that people admired me because they knew I wasn't Jewish, but yet we were there with our little kids, Fridays and Saturdays. I mean, our kids grew up there, and that's why they, have gone all the way through confirmation there, and they feel comfortable there, and that's their place, right? Yeah. And actually, probably a lot of you, even walking into here, were thinking, I've been told I'm the most Jewish non-Jew anyone's ever met. So some of you might not have even known I wasn't Jewish before we walked in. But so like I said, education is my background. And when the religious school needed a temporary education director,
10 years later,
and my kids were there, I said, okay, education and leadership, education administration is my background. I can do this. I don't need to be Jewish. I know a lot about Judaism just from learning over the many years, and education and administration is my background. I can do this. And I loved it. We were very active. My kids were there. We had a great number of kids in the community there, and I've been kind of doing something with the education part for the last 10-something years.
Since really Hannah went in the religious school.
Well, I started it when Ellie, we added the pre-K program when Ellie, the year before kindergarten for Ellie. And Ellie is now 16, and I'm still running the teen Kesher program now. So
you followed her all the way up.
So I followed her all the way up, exactly.
Say lovey.
But that's my professional background too, so it makes sense.
Absolutely. Jacob, what would you add as a Jewish spouse? What has it been like to be plugged in as an interfaith family? You're obviously very active as well.
Yeah, I mean, it never really was an issue for both of us. I mean, we are both one that, when we feel that we want to do something and we're committed to it, then we do it, and we do it with all of our might. And I think that's something that we've kind of decided. I wouldn't say we've communicated this to each other, hey, we're going to be involved in this, but it's something that we both do. I think it's to show our kids what right. A family can do. It doesn't matter that one is Jewish and one is not Jewish. It was irrelevant. We are a family. This is what we do, and this is how we do it. And I think that's the mentality we've always had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just have to say, I think I admire the way that you all have kind of just, even at a time where attitudes maybe weren't as welcoming, just decided, hey, we're here and we're going to be part of it. Right. And I want to get to talking about some of the ways that you, too, have also helped shape attitudes around interfaith inclusion at Temple Beth-El. But before I get there, I want to give you a chance, too, to talk about the J's preschool, since we're here at the J. And you shared with me that was kind of an important part, too, of starting to feel welcome.
Yeah, so both of our girls attended the preschool here at the JCC. We lived right here in Crestwood, so it made sense. It made sense that they would get additional. I mean, they've always gone to Sunday school, but they would get additional Jewish learning, starting their years off, and then Sunday school. And that helped me feel more comfortable too, just about Judaism in general, and learning more about Judaism and meeting other people that were Jewish and not Jewish, and some families that were similar to mine, not exactly. But most of the people that I know have had a Jewish spouse and then a non-Jewish spouse that has converted. So they don't consider themselves necessarily interfaith families anymore. However, they still have extended families. The non-Jewish spouse has an extended family that is not Jewish. So at Temple Beth-El, that whole group is included under our inner everything kind of umbrella, if you will. They still with their in-laws, they still may be struggling with what do you do around Christmas time if you're raising Jewish kids. And so it's kind of a larger umbrella that we're trying to include rather than just specific interfaith, central families.
Yeah, great transition,
So-
and I'm glad that you shared that because I do think that's been such an exciting part of that program, that we have people who are Jewish but have non-Jewish relatives, and that people are able to come and identify in all these different ways. I was actually hoping you could talk just a little bit about, how you all navigate that dynamic too. Like we were talking about sort of dynamics around Christmas and things like that. Maybe you can share a little bit of your personal experience there.
So we keep a kosher home, kosher style,
Kosher
I
style,
would say,
right.
kosher style home.
Right. Don't mix milk and meat. We don't eat shellfish. We don't eat pork and that
Right.
stuff. And even in the house or as well as outside the house.
Right. So when we go to my family's house for Christmas or just in general, anytime we visit, that requires my mom to also pay attention to what she's serving and try to accommodate my family, even though they want to have ham for Christmas or Easter. So, and my mom's been amazing about it,
Yeah.
and my dad. The one thing I required before we got engaged was, I'll raise my kids Jewish, but on Christmas with my family, you have to come to church with me and my girls to support me in one and only one holiday for the entire year. And he agreed to that. Totally reluctant. The first 10 years, he was horrible at it.
That's
Horrible.
a long run.
Terrible. He sat in church like this. And it was so embarrassing that I finally said, okay, you know what? How about you not come? Because you're upsetting me. This isn't fun for me. This isn't a joyous occasion if you're upset.
Yeah.
My girls will still come with me, but you just stay at home and we'll just see you after. And he said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So every year, the first year was like this, the second year was like this, and the third year was like this, and the fourth year was like this, and then...
And then I get in trouble for fiddling around.
Correct. So, it's still, yeah. He's gotten so much better.
I've gotten better.
It's
Yeah,
taken
better.
31 years,
30
but
years.
but he's doing it. He said he would, and he's following his end of the bargain. So I have to be okay with that. I agreed to that. So that's what we're doing. So, and we did have a Christmas. We had a Hanukkah bush.
Hanukkah bush, yeah.
The first couple years,
Yeah.
and he could not handle it. He just could not handle
Didn't
it.
go over well.
No, he just couldn't handle it. And I said, you know what? It's not worth this.
So still a process of
Right.
learning and negotiating as you go.
And every time I go, when I go to my family's house, I'd help my mom decorate, like that was the place for that holiday. It just was causing too much stress for him, and I realized after time it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that,
Yeah,
Jacob?
I mean, like she said, her parents have been fantastic. They have a menorah, they have Shabbat candles, because there's always a time where we're, Hanukkah's during Christmas or whenever, and we're there during Shabbat, so we light the Shabbat candles there, we light the menorah there, and she partakes, and the nephews now partake, and they've gotten to know a little bit more about Judaism. And it's worked out to the way it needs to work out.
And I'll tell everyone about the whole Santa thing.
Yes.
So if you have kids watching, turn this off because you might not want your kids to hear this. But so at the beginning, when the kids were little, so all of the grandkids had stockings. My mom would wrap the boys' gifts in a certain paper, and that came from Santa, right? And she would wrap gifts for my girls for the stockings in different paper, and wouldn't say anything. No one ever pointed that out until they were old enough to realize, wait a minute, why are they different? So we would say that Santa comes to the houses of people that are Christian. And so they're here, Santa's coming because Jack and Will are here.
Yeah.
And Nanny has bought stuff for your girls because we're here to celebrate together as a family. And we definitely don't want you to be left out. But Santa comes to families, houses that are Christian. And my girls were like, oh, okay.
They're like, that makes sense.
And the boys didn't care because they got stuff from Santa.
Right.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to, I was worried that it would ruin it for my nephews, which I did not want to do.
Yeah.
But I had to figure out a way to make it work.
That seems like a great solution.
It can be tricky. But,
yeah, it's interesting, these little things, and the little things that you don't think of that you have to figure out as you go.
It's all about the workaround.
Right.
Well, I'm going to bring us to some sort of forward-facing closing questions.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that you all can tell us a little bit about your involvement with Kroof and what that program looked like, and that can lead us into you telling us a little bit about the interfaith program you're planning for next week.
Perfect.
And then we'll end on some advice giving.
Okay. So the Kroof program is a program that was started by the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs. And it started, I believe, as a result of the 2013 Pew study, which showed that intermarriages was on the rise and that, synagogues really needed to pay attention to the research, to the numbers, to try to get our interfaith families and people in general still connected to Judaism, okay, so that the numbers don't decline. So Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs started this Kroof program, and Rabbi Chuck Simon, who was the executive director of the program at the time, he held a program in Chicago and invited any
open,
participants that from synagogues around the country
All over, yeah.
to come to be trained on their new Kroof initiative. So Rabbi Konigsberg at the time forwarded the email to us about the program and said, "Would you guys be interested in going?" And we said, "Absolutely. That's that's right up our alley. We will totally go. We'll be the representatives for Beth-El, and we'll come back and teach." The point was to come back and teach your synagogues what you learned.
Got it.
So we went to Chicago. That was in like 2015,
Yeah.
I believe.
And there was I'd say probably, it was a handful, maybe 15 to 20 couples, some married, some just different representatives from the different synagogues that were invited. And Rabbi Simon, we loved him. From the minute we laid eyes on him and we hit it off immediately. We still keep in touch. He lives up in New York, and he's come to our house, and we've stayed at his place. But anyway, he did a phenomenal job, and we brought that to Beth-El, and we had our first Kroof event, I guess, it was about a year later?
It was in 2016.
Yeah.
So what we learned there was it had a lot to do with the language that synagogues are using, okay? It had a lot to do with looking at the language on your website. Is it welcoming language, or does it exclude certain people?
Yeah.
What do your bylaws state? Is it welcoming for a non-interfaith parent whose child is having a b'nai mitzvah? What can they do? What can't they do? So it was a lot of looking into what the synagogue's policies were, as well as the language around trying to make everything more welcoming.
Right.
Okay, so that was kind of
the key was welcoming.
Right. So the key was to try to look at your own synagogue and to tweak anything that you can to try to make it a more welcoming place, so that eventually you can shift the culture to a more welcoming culture. Okay.
Using
So
different terms. Right.
So when we came back, we gave all the information to the leadership, and we ended up hosting our own Kroof weekend in 2016. So Rabbi Chuck Simon came to Temple Beth-El for the weekend, and it was a packed weekend, which is the lineup is very similar as it is going to be for the one we're having next weekend here. But basically, he came, he shared a lot of the research information. He came with all the content, right? And we had a grandparenting session then as well. We had a session kind of on, he gave the Devar Torah, of course, too, and had a session that was kind of more for Jewish members and what they can do to be more welcoming to people coming in that are not members,
Yeah.
And it's specifically to people that are not Jewish. And the weekend was fantastic.
Was
So
there,
that was
was
kind
there
of
a positive reception?
it was a
Yeah,
very
it was,
positive
yeah.
reception.
It was
That
nice.
was kind of the beginning of the shift of the culture to a more welcoming culture at Temple Beth-El. So you had asked, when did that start? I think that was really the main start of that in 2016.
That kicked it off, for sure.
Right. So then, as a result of that, then we started a committee called the Ambassador Committee, because we said, well, not only do we need to be welcoming to interfaith families and to non-Jewish people, we need to be welcoming to everyone that walks through the door.
Yeah.
So what else can we do to shift that to welcome more people, right? To all people. Yeah. So the ambassador program was basically anyone that showed interest or had questions or wanted to know information about programming, we would give their name to the ambassador program. They would be assigned a certain ambassador. The ambassador would offer to come and sit at services with them or meet them at dinners anyway.
That's really nice.
So that was another
Yeah.
shift, which was fantastic. And
You still
then
have that? synagogue?
No,
There's some evolution.
Yes.
There's a membership committee, and
so it was kind of membership and the ambassadors. Anyway, and so then now as a result, after that, now you've created the Inner Everything program. Do you want to talk more about that?
Well, I think you kind of hit on it earlier, and I mean, really, it's been a joint effort, I think, in sort of reviving an official sort of programming stream that's really geared for, welcoming interfaith families and widening, and individuals, and really widening that definition.
Right.
So, yeah, it's been great to work together on that
Yes.
the last couple of years. And, it's interesting to hear you talk about that, because I do think there is a welcoming culture at Beth-El, and it sounds like some of that did come from some of those efforts.
Yes. So the culture has changed, which is fantastic. And I think a lot, so with the creation of the Halpern Levite Kid Zone too, downstairs, that we wanted also a neutral, safe place where interfaith families specifically could go watch their children and also hear and see the live stream on the wall. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable enough to go actually into the services, but they were able to follow along and be in the building and meet people and all those things. So that was another step of trying to make it a more welcoming place for more people.
Yeah, so tell us about what you're planning next week.
So what we're planning is...
but you're in the hot seat.
Right, so next Friday and Saturday, March 8th and 9th, we are having our big interfaith weekend. And so Friday, we've gotten lots of sponsors. We had such a great response from sponsorship, so I'm thrilled, and thank you to all of you that sponsored. I really appreciate it. Couldn't done it without you, for sure. We're having a Dr. Karen McGinnity. Okay, let me back up here. So one of the really good things that's come out of the KROOT program is the conservative movement, finally, after all of these years and after all of this research and data, has decided to hire an interfaith specialist within the conservative movement. That's huge, because when KROOT was going along, the conservative movement was very quiet. They weren't giving much information about how welcoming you should be to interfaith families. There just really was no guidance. And so Dr. Karen McGinnity is going to be here with us next weekend for the Interfaith Weekend. And she is the brand new interfaith specialist, and she's going to be bringing additional information that's coming directly from the conservative movement. So I'm thrilled about that, because that says that the conservative movement has finally figured it out, that if you don't do something, they're certainly going to go reform, or they're just not going to connect at all. And so that's a big deal that she's coming next weekend.
And I completely forgot to bring flyers, but I'll say all the information is on our website. So hope to see you all there, and we can maybe send some follow-up information to folks too who are interested.
So Friday in the morning, there's a meet and greet with Dr. McGinnity just for sponsors only. She is so excited to meet some of our sponsors, and she would love that personal connection. So sponsors are invited first thing in the morning for the breakfast. Then on Friday, also at 12 o'clock at Temple Emmanuel, we're partnering with them on this particular program, but it is a grandparenting session. Nan is going to be sharing her interfaith story, and throughout the weekend, we have people that are sharing people with interfaith backgrounds are sharing their stories, only because we know that, the more you share your story, someone may connect with that, and you may learn something new about someone you didn't know that you see at Temple all the time.
Like you said earlier, some people don't even know that you're not
Correct.
Jewish.
So I'm sharing my story on Saturday. Nan is sharing her story on Friday during the grandparenting. You're sharing your story.
I don't remember when.
I can't remember either. Jem and Duncan are sharing their story on Friday night after the dinner. So that's kind of a little component of it as well. But so the grandparenting session's at 12, and then we have a musical Kabbalat Shabbat service on Friday night at Temple Beth-El, followed by Warren's famous fried chicken dinner after, which we're thrilled about. He only does that for very special occasions.
Just for Maurine.
Just for me,
That is true. We had to beg for it a little
I know.
bit. He was willing.
And then we're going to do the program after the dinner. So certainly stay and listen to Dr. McGinnity. She's going to have some great info to give. And then Saturday is the regular Shabbat service. We have some interfaith families that are participating in the service. I'll share my story then. Dr. McGinnity will give the Devar Torah at the service, and then we'll have the Kiddush lunch, and then after that there'll be another session that you can stay where she's really going to bring more information specifically from the conservative movement, which I'm super excited to hear about. And then Saturday night, we're just going to have a fun party at Monday Night Brewing. Really cool place. We're going to do like a vegetarian and taco bar, and we're just going to have fun.
Yeah.
And that's Saturday night.
And I'll just say that I'm particularly excited about that because, and I think this reflects some of what you all have shared with us today too, but I think oftentimes when we do interfaith programming, it can be very serious.
Yeah.
It can be a little fear mongering sometimes. And, what I love about what you all have shared with us today is that this has been, in a lot of ways, a light and a fun conversation. The weekend is going to be a mixture of, some heavier programming, but also a chance to just celebrate, the interfaith families that are part of our community. So I want to close this out by giving you both a chance to give some advice to anyone who might be out there watching the video who's maybe an up-and-coming interfaith couple. What advice would you give to the next generation of interfaith families?
Be truthful to each other and get it right at the beginning so you can carry through longevity.
And I would say be true to yourself too.
Right. Well,
But I would say the most important thing is to have those hard, deep conversations before you even think of getting engaged. Because if you can't make it through that step, you're not going to make it through getting married. So
Communication.
communication
Communication.
is huge up front. Yep.
Partnership.
Right.
Well, thank you
Right.
both so much for sharing with us
Thank
today. We give them a
you.
round of applause.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for joining us today, and I want to give a special thanks to the Alabama Humanities Alliance and for the Ted and Marjorie LJCC funded the Birmingham Jewish Foundation for their providing funding for us to be able to have this wonderful program. There's so much going on at the JCC and in our community. Please look, we're doing questions with the rabbi, we're doing Heschel, we have the food fest coming up, we're baking ham and tashen and doing Shuach Manot with Isa for our members. So please join us, and next Southern Jewish Voices will be on March 20th, I jumped a month, with KI Leadership, with Bess Morkey and Martin. So really, really excited. Thank you again for coming, and thank you for inspiring story in a really, really unique way to raise your family.
Thank you.
Short period of time.
Great job.
Thank you.